Now that we've spent some time looking at the first two areas that England colonized in North America, the area of Jamestown, which spread out into Virginia, and then up here, the Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay colonies that will become Massachusetts. And we're going to look at how the colonies of England spread all the way from what we now call Maine, which back there, if you look here, it says it was part of Massachusetts, down to what we now call Georgia, which is a little bit smaller than what the state of Georgia looks like now. So we're going to be examining how the English kind of gained control and spread out over these areas. Some of these areas they took over or came to first and settled them, and some of these areas like the middle colonies here in New York and Pennsylvania around the Hudson River originally were Dutch colonies that England ended up taking over until they basically ruled kind of the whole eastern coast of what is now the United States. You'll see these colonies separated into regions by color. You have yellow, purple, and green. Yellow are what we call the New England colonies, as you can see in the key down here. So the New England colonies are made up of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, which is right here, and Connecticut. Back then, there is no Maine. Maine is part of Massachusetts. And there's also no Vermont. Both New York and New Hampshire kind of claim the area of Vermont as their own. Okay, so this is where we're going to start our efforts. We also have the middle colonies. Down here, you can see it in purple. So New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware make up the middle colonies. And then down here, you have the southern colonies. You can see them in green. So you have Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland, which is kind of a funny shape on this map. Actually, there's some water here on normal maps, which gives Maryland a much different looking shape on most maps. But anyway, these are your 13 colonies, and they're set up in 3 distinct regions. A region being an area of land that has something about its people or its resources or both in common. And we're going to look at the colonies, and we're going to look at what the region is like, the type of people who settle there, what their natural resources are, what do they use for resources there, what do they have available to them, what do they make, what do they buy and sell, so what do they export to England. So the purpose of the colonies is not just a place for people to live, but also to make money for England. So each set of colonies sends specific things across the ocean back to England. So we're going to look at what things they make and what do they send out to England. So we're going to look at their exports. And we're going to kind of look at how those colonies grow and develop over time and the economy of each group of colonies. So the economy is basically, how do you make money? How do you use your natural resources and your people and your goods, the things that you make, and your services, the things that you do to kind of help your colony run and help people make money. So that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at how these colonies develop, which is important because these colonies will become the United States. And we're going to start up here in the yellow with New England, because New England is where we live. We still call this area New England, actually. And we live in Massachusetts, kind of over here in the southwestern corner of Massachusetts. So this is going to be the area that we start, and it will also be a familiar area because it was the area that we just studied that the Puritans and Pilgrims first came to. One of the other things that you're going to be asked to do as we study the 13 colonies is to know where each of them are and what their shape is and what they look like, which is important because this is the area that we live in, and all of these colonies are now states and they're all close to us, and we should know where they are. We should know that if we're going to go to Georgia, we're going to go way down here south by Florida. We should know that if we're going to Maine, which was Massachusetts back then, we're going to go north. We should know that New York is next to us. So these are all things that we should know. This is useful skills that we need to know, is where things are in our country. So one of the things you're going to be asked to do is to memorize and name the different colonies, which will become states. And I'm going to have you play a game that will have you click on the colonies when it gives you a name so that you can match the colony with the correct name, and that's going to be one of the ways that we're going to practice. So I would like you to go ahead and just pause the map for a minute now and get a good idea of where these colonies are before you head over to play the game later in class.